Bringing you the pulse of Providence now. It's been nearly a month since Colonel Oscar Perez became the first Latino police chief in the city of Providence. He sat down today with our Steph Machado to talk about his story as a young immigrant in Providence, why he became a police officer, and his plans for the department. Steph joins us now live in Providence with the exclusive interview. Steph?
Well, in our first extended sit down with the chief, he talked about his vision for policing the city and opened up about his formative years in South Providence.
Trying to learn the language, getting used to the snow, getting used to the weather.
Oscar Perez spent his teen years on Elma Street in South Providence.
We lived in an attic at the time. My father and I immigrated. Just an immigrant who came to a new life, new country, trying to figure out what was going on, right?
And you've got a few boxing gloves I see hanging in your office. So what was the significance of the boxing for you as a kid?
My first time I remember, I was in there. I don't know if they were trying to teach me a lesson. They put me with this kid who had been boxing for a while and took a little beating, right? So they thought I wasn't going to come back, and I came back the next day. And I realized how much that sport had to offer, from discipline, from understanding the difficulties of life.
He did witness crime growing up and how police operated in his neighborhood.
Drugs, you name it. We had fights. And so the cops would come, and I would see how they cleaned up the street, locked up some people. And, you know, I was admiring that. And then, obviously, I used to leave my house and drive in, and I get pulled over because of the fact that they thought maybe I was in the mix of the things that were going on that street. Some officers were professional, others were not.
That experience, he says, made him a better officer when he joined the force in 1994.
It was actually a privilege to me to be able to grow up in a neighborhood that had those type of issues, because I think police officers that are good police officers are the ones that have great life experiences, right? Someone that has compassion, empathy, and understanding for the social ills that many times we face.
We talked about much more in our half-hour conversation, from the chief's thoughts on the law enforcement officer's Bill of Rights to the time he had to fire his service weapon while on the job. You can find that full interview on Pulse of Providence right now on WPRI.com. Live in Providence, I'm Steph Machado, 12 News.
And now to the Pulse of Providence. Colonel Oscar Perez has been on the job for about a month as Chief of Providence Police. At 5, we brought you his story about coming from Providence to Colombia and ultimately rising to be police chief. 12 News reporter Steph Machado talked to him about some of his most memorable days on the job, both good and bad.
We wanted to sit down with Colonel Perez to help the community get to know him a little better, from his personal story to what kind of police chief he wants to be. In the 80s, Oscar Perez was a teenager in South Providence. He saw crime around him.
Drugs, you name it. We had fights. And so the cops would come, and I would see how they cleaned up the street, locked up some people. And, you know, I was admiring that.
Did you know back then that you wanted to be a police officer?
And I was at Central High School, and 2 detectives came in and spoke to us about street law. And he caught an interest from Providence. And he caught my interest, and from there on, I graduated from Central High School, and my goal was to become a cop.
Perez joined the force in 1994 and became a dad the same year.
I'm at a call. It was right off Cranston Street. We got into a foot chase, so domestic, and we ended up. I chased the kid, ended up grabbing him in the middle of the street, and as I'm holding him, they came over the radio saying, "Patrolman Perez to acknowledge." So I come over and I grab the radio and I says, "Yeah, Perez on." It says, "Well, you need to rush to a woman and infants hospital." My son was being born, so.
There have been hard days. In 2017, he was one of several Providence officers, along with state police troopers, who fired their service weapons at a suspect on I-95. He was killed by police.
This job comes with a lot of challenges, right? And many times you have to use deadly force, right? And you can't take that lightly.
As chief, he aims to increase community policing in the department to include more officers.
And this city is so diverse, everybody has different needs. We have to be, if you happen to work in the east side of Providence, you happen to work on Cranston Street, or you're working in South Providence, as an officer, you have to understand what it is that they want and how they want to be serviced. And that's what community policing is all about.
Like many departments, Providence is struggling with recruitment. A new police academy started on Monday. It was funded and approved for 50 officers, but Perez tells me they ended up with just 35. You can watch our full interview right now on Pulse of Providence on WPRI.com. I'm Steph Machado, 12 News.